What's up guys, Mickle here, and in this video, I want to talk about something that's getting a ton of attention right now and is about to be a very big deal in this Ripple SEC case. And that is if the SEC is going to be allowed to 180 on the Bill Hinman Ethereum free pass emails. We know that in the past, the SEC has stated that these Bill Hinman emails were all his personal opinion, but recently have been desperately trying to 180 on this point and now say the emails were SEC guided. In this video, I want to show you guys some evidence straight from Judge Netburn herself that I think is going to make it very obvious whether or not the SEC is going to be allowed to get away with this complete switch up in their argument. Guys, I think this is something we need to be paying very close attention to, and this is going to be front and center in the in-person discussion between Ripple and the SEC taking place on Tuesday. You guys are not going to want to miss this. Guys, I also have a very important chart you guys are going to want to see at the end of this video. I want to quickly talk about where I think this market is headed and where a potential bottom can be. I think this chart is going to be very good for understanding where we are in the current correction and when we can expect a turnaround. Make sure to stick around for that. Like always, guys, if you are new to this channel or come here all the time, please take a second to hit the like and subscribe button down below. It goes such a long way in helping this channel grow, and it really does mean so much to me. If you guys are ever looking for a good place to buy some XRP, make sure to check out the link in the description below. With that said though, let's jump right into it, and I hope you guys enjoy the content. Now guys, before we get into a very important discussion about what's going on right now in the Ripple SEC case and what we're going to see out of the court next week, I want to quickly show you this because I thought it was very interesting out of Stephen Hubert. He asked a question, is the IMF special drawing rights, the XDR, comparable to a world bridge currency? And for those of you who don't know, the IMF is the International Monetary Fund, and they're like the central bank of central banks. They create bailouts for all kinds of different nations. They control global monetary policy and is really a group of the elites of the elites. They have a special tool they use called the XDR, which is the special drawing right, which is essentially a tool they use to create unlimited bailouts, essentially. That's essentially what it's used for. He was asking Stephen Hubert if it could be used like a world bridge currency. I responded to him that it was more, from my understanding, like an unlimited neutral debt bailout. I said neutral in parentheses because it's not really neutral. It's controlled by the IMF, but it's really just used as a debt bailout. They essentially create these XDRs and then bail out nations who have massive debt problems. He actually responded to me though with something extremely interesting. He said XDR equals international drawing rights, and that equals debts. And that is something the International Monetary Fund actually has on their website. That's what it stands for, XDR, International Drawing Rights, and it's used for debts. And then he says XRP, International Payment Rights, equals liquidity. And that was extremely interesting for me because we know that Ripple works heavily with the IMF, and the IMF already has an XDR, which they use for international drawing rights to essentially get rid of debt. Well, it would make sense if they also needed a payment instrument, they would use something like XRP, and they're already working with Ripple to create more inclusive, more efficient financial systems. So I tweeted in response to that, and I said, oh, okay, because it was already very interesting, the relationship between these two acronyms for payment instruments. But I said, what about if the XDR, which is what the monetary fund already uses, was issued on the XRPL? So then you had the XDR on the XRPL, which could be used to essentially get rid of debts, and then you had XRP, which could be the liquidity token for the payment. Ultimately, we have no idea if something like this is already in the works, it's already happening behind the scenes, or it's not going to happen at all. But what I really want to show you here is the different, very interesting ways you could use the XRP ledger and create completely new financial instruments that are highly efficient, highly transparent, and are going to create a space age kind of system for for our current financial system. This was extremely interesting to me, and I think it's just really important to be paying attention to these new developments that very well could take place when we see massive institutions start building real products on the XRP ledger. With that said, I want to segment into a very important thing that's currently going down in the Ripple SEC case, and I want to quickly show you this diagram to just catch everyone up and show you exactly where we stand right now in this case, what the SEC is trying to do, because what they're trying to do in this case right now is highly unusual. They are trying to change their argument halfway through a case because they do not like the way it's going. I want to quickly break that down, but then I want to show you guys and tell you why I do not think they are going to be allowed to do this 180, and it's not based on my own speculation, it's based on the things Judge Netburn has said herself. I think these things are going to be very interesting for you to see, and I think you guys are actually going to be pretty shocked with some of the things that Judge Netburn has actually said directly to the SEC. So essentially what the SEC tried to do here is they had two ways they could have gone down the Ethereum free pass speech. They could have either said it was all Bill Hinman's personal opinion or it was SEC guided. If they said it was SEC guided, they would have to compare Ethereum versus XRP, and there's no way you can say Ethereum today is not a security, but XRP is. There's no valid argument you could make. There's pretty much nothing you could point to, and if anything, based on the SEC's own guidelines, Ethereum seems a lot more like a security than XRP ever could be. So the SEC knew they couldn't do this, or they would have had an automatic loss in this case, and it would be pointless. The one thing they could have tried to do to win this case is they could have said it was all Bill Hinman's personal opinion and then hope they didn't have to hand over the Ethereum free pass documents. That's because if the SEC never actually gave guidance on Ethereum, which is the route they were trying to take, then they would never have to compare Ethereum versus XRP. They could say that was all Hinman's personal opinion, and it doesn't matter what was said about Ethereum because it was never actually guidance. Therefore, they would essentially be creating new policy with XRP, but one thing got in their way, and that was the Ethereum free pass documents. That's because if it was their personal opinion, by law, they would have to hand over these documents for Ripple, because Ripple should know, why was Bill Hinman running around at the SEC giving his personal opinion and giving free passes to certain cryptocurrencies? That's something Ripple deserves to know. But the SEC was taking the gamble. They were hoping they would not have to hand over these docs and maybe be able to sneak out of this thing with a win, because if they didn't have to hand over these docs, then it looks like they might have had an avenue to sneaking through this thing without giving XRP clarity. But unfortunately for the SEC, very fortunate for us, so far the court has maintained the position that the Ethereum free pass documents do have to go over to Ripple. Now, this is a huge issue for the SEC because we know it is highly likely it knows Ethereum free pass documents. Someone said something about XRP. Someone said, hey, if Ethereum is considered non-security, what about XRP? And this is a huge problem for the SEC and would be a bombshell moment in this case. That's because if it is proven in these emails that the SEC knew this entire time that XRP should not be a security and they pursued this case anyway, well, not only are they going to lose, but they're also going to expose their own corruption. So this is even worse than the first scenario where they were just going to straight up lose. Now they're going to lose and expose themselves. So what is the SEC trying to do? And this is the important part. They're trying to pivot out of this. They already know they're going to have to hand over these documents, but now they want to pivot out to number two and just say, you know what? This is looking bad. We would rather just compare ETH versus XRP than risk exposing the corruption going on at the SEC and in the process also losing the case. So that's the question. Will the SEC be allowed to make this pivot? And I want to show you evidence from Judge Netburn that makes me believe there is no way the SEC is going to be allowed to make this pivot. Take a look at these statements made by Judge Netburn, and I think it's going to really convince you guys that Judge Netburn really is running out of patience with the SEC, and I don't think she's going to allow the SEC's absurd actions to continue. Take a listen to this. This was actually from Judge Netburn in a prior ruling on the issue of of DPP, and she made it very clear that she does not think the SEC should be allowed to pivot. And this is a quote from Judge Netburn right here. A party may not advance new facts, issues, or arguments not previously presented to the court on a motion for reconsideration, nor are motions for reconsideration a vehicle for relitigating old issues, presenting the case under new theories, securing and rehearsing on the merits, or otherwise taking a second bite at the apple. Boom. Judge Netburn roasts the SEC right here, and she says, look, it's Hinman's personal opinion. You're not changing your mind. You can't just reconsider, come back with new evidence, and say, okay, we changed our mind now. And those aren't my words. She literally said, you can't take a second bite of the apple. You're already locked in. This is Hinman's personal opinion. And I doubt Judge Netburn says something this strong, this straightforward, and then allows the SEC later to go back in 180. She is sick of their games, and it's obvious by reading this, she's not going to let them pivot. I don't think there's any way she goes back on these statements right here, because she makes it so clear that that is not what the SEC should be doing in these motions for reconsideration. But that's not even it. Let me show you two more quotes, and I think after reading this, you will understand that the SEC is not going to be allowed to make this pivot, and Judge Netburn has already made this extremely clear. She said, Hinman's declaration nevertheless confirmed under oath what the disclaimer made clear, that the speech was intended to and did reflect his personal views. So boom, right there, she's saying Hinman said under oath it was his personal views. The disclaimer in the speech said it was his personal views. It's his personal views. And then she goes on to say something else that might be the most important. She says, the SEC seeks to have it both ways, but the speech was either intended to reflect agency policy or it was not. Having insisted that it reflected Hinman's personal views, the SEC cannot now reject its own position. So boom, making it completely clear. The SEC already said this was Hinman's personal opinion. They cannot now go back and argue something else and say, oh, actually, we don't like the way this turned out. We're now actually going to argue something else. She says this is not allowed. It's very clear that under oath, this was Hinman's personal opinion, and the SEC can't split this issue down the middle. They can't say, oh, these parts were his personal opinion, but these parts are agency policy. She's saying no, she's rejecting that idea. She says this is either all his personal opinion or it's all SEC guided. You can't say some parts are this and some parts are that. Stick with one argument, and the argument you already picked is it's Hinman's personal opinion. Therefore, I'm completely in line with what Jeremy Hogan says here. I don't see how the SEC is going to walk the fine line that they are trying to do. More problematic for them is if she asks the rest of the emails to be reviewed, and that will include the ones they don't want her to see. Ouch. So Jeremy Hogan doesn't think they're going to be allowed to make this flip-flop. He thinks the SEC is going to have to hand over all the emails to the court for an in-person review. I completely agree, and I think this is going to get the SEC very scared and make a settlement a top priority on their mind. And last of all, guys, I wanted to show you this quick chart just to show you guys what kind of the fears in the market are like right now. I think it's very important to realize you see so many people calling for a financial disaster right now, a complete meltdown, and this guy put out this tweet and it just says if 2008 hit again, and just showed all the different times people were calling for 2008 to hit again, all the fear that goes into the market, and then what ends up happening. Since 2008 happened, which was the biggest meltdown in our financial system ever, every single time there's been a downturn, people started talking about it being 08 again. But it never really happens that way. We always have some kind of correction, but it's never as bad as the worst financial meltdown in history. Do I think we're necessarily at the bottom right this second? No. Do I think it could go down a little bit further? Yes. But do I think it's going to be a complete meltdown like every single other time people try to predict it? No, I do not think so. I think it will probably correct. It will probably be bad. Might go down more. We might have already bottomed. But if you're trying to wait for this extreme fear scenario, it rarely happens. You can't invest waiting for one of these anomalies. You have to look at prices of great assets and say, wow, this is a steal. Guys, there is always going to be people predicting a worst case scenario. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. Thank you so much for coming. I hope you enjoyed the update. And for now, Mickle out.